Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Kim, and I am the Community Engagement Associate with Actera Action for a Healthy Planet. I wanted to thank everyone for attending this event. And then today, along with Climate Voice, we'll be talking about how to transform climate anxiety into climate action in your workplace and how employees can speak up to raise the bar on corporate climate advocacy. A quick overview about Actera for those who are new. We are a Bay Area-wide environmental nonprofit based in Palo Alto. We were founded back in 1970 and have been helping communities ever since. Our mission is to bring people together to create local solutions for a healthy planet. And we do this through educating people on individual actions they can take, as well as harnessing policy advocacy to create broader change through legislation. Our website is listed right here below if you'd like to find out more about our different programs. And then just to do a quick overview of our programs, we have four major pillars: beneficial electrification, which focuses on electrifying both your homes and your vehicles. Our next program is our food and climate change program, which focuses on integrating plant-based foods into your diet while reducing food waste. Our third pillar is education for the general public as well as for youths, which include programs that designed for middle school students and high school students. And then our final pillar is advocacy, for which we lead or are a part of several local coalitions. And then going deeper into our education pillar, this includes our Youth Be the Change program, which is focused on middle school students and their teachers. And we teach them the fundamentals of climate change. We have also recently started an outdoor education program where we take classrooms to an outdoor garden or farm. And then for high school students, we have our Actera Student Ambassador program, also known as ASAP, where we teach them how to advocate for themselves and their communities through making spoken as well as written public comments. And then finally, our education pillar includes a public lecture series for which we are part of today. This brings together experts across different topics to talk about the issues that are important to climate action right now. And then some of our very new programs include the City of Menlo Park and their electric garden voucher program. So eligible residents and businesses in Menlo Park can now receive financial assistance when purchasing e-garden tools. Residents can receive vouchers of up to $250, while businesses may qualify for vouchers of up to $1,000. Actera is very proud to be working with the city to distribute these vouchers. For more details about this program, including eligibility requirements and how to apply, please scan this QR code right here on the screen. And then very similarly, with the City of Mountain View, Actera is excited to introduce the e-bike voucher program. This empowers eligible residents in the City of Mountain View to access vouchers of up to $1,500 for purchasing environmentally friendly e-bikes from designated vendors. Feel free to also scan this QR code to learn more about this program. And I want to thank our partners, our series sponsors, LinkedIn, and then the Foster Museum, who make this lecture possible. And we do support all of your, we do encourage and appreciate all of your support to keep all of our events free. So if you are able to do so, we encourage you to visit actera.org/donate now. And then some very quick Zoom details. We'll be having a Q&A session around towards the middle of this event. So feel free to unmute yourselves then. But in the meantime, put all of your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring them and making sure all of them get answered. And then before you leave this event, please fill out this survey, which will give us feedback for any of our future events. And then we'll put this link in the chat towards the end. And with further ado, I want to hand it off to our two amazing speakers from Climate Voice, Jennifer Allen and Deborah McNamara. You can read their bios on the screen, but I want to hand it off to them. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thanks to Actera for having us. I think you have to get out of that for me to share my screen.
Let's do that.
We're thrilled to be here, and thank you all for joining us. And let's see if this shows up well. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, yeah, we can see it.
Awesome, great. Well, as we said, today we're going to talk about transforming your climate anxiety into climate action in the workplace. As Michelle mentioned, I'm Jennifer Allen. I lead campaigns for Climate Voice. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. And before joining the team to work on climate, I actually had a long career in diversity and inclusion at PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I was trying to get our partnership to make a big stand on social issues. So now we're doing the same for climate. So basically, we're going to introduce the topic, really talk about why climate policy matters so much in the workplace, how employees in particular can drive change. Then we definitely want to have time for your questions and some dialogue. And then we have a call to action that we'd like you to help us move forward in terms of one of our big campaign initiatives. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how anxious do you feel about climate change? Just put a number in the chat. And we want to get just a sense of where are we on our anxiety level. 1 is low and 10 is high.
So Jennifer, I see a lot of nines, a couple tens, and an 8 so far, just to give you a sense of what's coming in.
Okay, perfect. So
We're high. We're high on, yeah.
You are not alone. Climate anxiety is real, and especially for young people. So the organization of Oz did this incredible study where they looked at a global survey of 10,000 young people, so 16 to 25, across 10 different countries. And they define climate anxiety like it's right here, which is worry, frustration, grief. And it's linked to both the reality of the crisis itself and our government's ongoing inability to respond with the urgency that it requires. So people are feeling really, really worried out there. 75% of these young people called the future frightening. More than 50% of them said they feel sad, anxious, angry, powerless, helpless on a regular basis. And almost 4 out of 10, 39%, said they were hesitant to have children because of the climate crisis. So this is really very stressful and really upsetting. However, what we know is the issue can be boiled down to 10 words. And I just actually had the chance to see Dr. Rosina Birnbaum, who teaches at the University of Michigan and is a very renowned climate scientist. And she said, basically, all you need to know is it's real, it's us, it's bad. Scientists agree. And she said at the session that I heard her say this, that's a really important part. And there's hope. So at ClimateVoice, we were founded because our founder, Bill Weil, was also really anxious about climate change. He was very worried. It was keeping him up at night. And he felt, because he had worked on the inside of these corporations, he was a sustainability leader at Facebook, and before that did all the green energy work at Google. He knew that companies have an incredibly important voice and that they really could use their influence and power to help address the crisis at scale, but that the transformative lever was policy. And too many of these companies weren't using their voice for policy. So our mission is to get pro-climate companies into the game, off the sidelines, and really using their voice in that way. So this is how we define the challenge. We all know, and you at Actera definitely know, given all of your expertise, that we need ambitious policy to solve the crisis at scale. We have some big goals coming up. 2030 is literally around the corner. And then we have mid-century goals for 2050. And in order to reach these ambitious goals, we need sweeping transformation and decarbonization of our economy. And we can only do that through government. But we can leverage the power of the corporate sector to accelerate that progress. However, too many companies, again, because climate has become polarized in our increasingly polarized political environment, they're on the sidelines. They don't want to use their political capital for these issues. And as a result, the dominant business voice in many of these debates, particularly in the US, and just I want to remind everyone that ClimateVoice is a US-based organization, even though we work with global companies. As a result, the dominant business voice is the fossil fuel companies, and we know where they stand, and they've been very, very successful obstructing meaningful climate policy in the US. They are also embedded in this by vested interests like trade associations, and we're going to go into that with a little bit more depth in a minute. So our theory of change is that companies think this is risky. It's going to take pressure to counterbalance that risk, and that the workforce, which is both students going into companies as the talent pool and then employees themselves who work at these companies, is this untapped and very powerful lever that can push companies from within. We often talk about we have sort of an inside-outside game. ClimateVoice is generating a lot of energy outside, and we're issuing reports and scorecards and social media and communications, but we need that pressure from within to really get this on the radar of business leaders, if you will. And what we've seen in the past is that employees have really moved their employers on a range of issues. And if you think about Black Lives Matter, to gender equality, to LGBT civil rights, we've seen tons of energy from employees inside companies to really change how companies deal with this. And at PwC, I saw this on the inside, where our LGBT employees said, hey, I love that you have good benefits for us, but we want you to take a stand on marriage equality. We want you to really try to help move these societal issues that are outside the firm and in a bigger picture. So we want to do the same thing for climate. And so that's why our tagline is that when employees speak, companies act. So we're trying to educate, motivate, activate employees on these issues and make the connections to policy so that they can really advocate and be internal champions within their companies. So right now, in terms of sustainability priorities, most companies are focused on Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Some progressive advanced companies are really looking at their supply chains and looking at Scope 3. As we know, in this country, we had a big debate at the SEC for the last 2 years about what scopes companies should be mandated to report in terms of the big public companies. But what we're trying to say is that we need to move these companies to the highest and best use of their voice, which is really lobbying, really influencing decision makers for the policy debates in the right actions that we need. And our friends at Influence Map, which is a think tank that we work closely with, they've called this Scope 4 impact. So if we take that chain of, Scope 1 is direct emissions, then we have purchased energy, then we have supply chain. Well, now we need companies to get in the game and actually lobby for ambitious, just, and equitable climate policy. So there are a lot of policies out there that we need corporate support for. We need citizen support for. These are sort of the big 10 as we think of them, and they all go into the buckets of standards, investments, and justice. So we need those three things together. And obviously, the Biden administration has passed some incredibly consequential legislation during the course of their first administration that have moved forward on all of these issues. What we're trying to do is to get companies to be less transactional about their lobbying when it comes to climate and much more strategic. So we'll talk to companies where they'll say, well, I'm not a transportation company, so we don't lobby on transportation. But as we know, every company uses transportation, both for their people to get around and for their products to get around. And so decarbonizing the transportation sector is a huge priority that we need everyone to be advocating for. So as I mentioned, as we think about the accountability levers that we use at ClimateVoice, it's framing the issue in a way that people can understand, both employees, the public, and the press. Getting the press's attention. So we talk to journalists all the time for really trying to raise the bar of corporate climate advocacy. What do they give companies credit for doing? We want employee pressure from the inside. We do a lot of direct executive outreach to the sustainability leaders at these companies that are sort of off the record, where we say to them, look, we want you to use our work as ammunition for your agenda. We're going to assume we're on the same side. We want your company to do more. How can we help you with your job? And then obviously for social media and communications, we need to get the connection between company influence and climate policy out into the world so that people really understand it. Now, our focus is on pro-climate companies. We're trying to move the good guys and make them great. So our leverage is that all of these companies listed here have a track record of policy advocacy, and they're very invested in having a great reputation on climate. So when we call them out for not doing enough, that we want them to close the gap between what they say and what they're actually doing, and to try to have their employees understand the difference in terms of that gap. We are not talking about the bad actors because, again, we're a small and scrappy team, and we have to be strategic about where we put our time and energy and influence. So one of the things that we learned during the course of working with these companies and doing some of our campaigns, we were particularly active during the fight for the Inflation Reduction Act when it was first called Build Back Better, was this notion of the Chamber of Commerce. So one of the things we asked companies to do was, when we asked them to be public in terms of their support of Build Back Better, we said, we also want you to be public about the negative lobbying of your own trade associations who are trying to kill the bill. And the US Chamber of Commerce in particular was one of the big villains on this, and we couldn't move any of the companies to do it. So this is something that we really wanted to focus serious attention on, because as Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who, as you all know, is a huge climate champion, somebody really, really focused on this issue and laser focused on the corporate sector and how they can help, he called them a menace to climate safety. and said that any company that considers itself a responsible actor on climate needs to take a serious look at whether its trade associations are fueling climate and economic catastrophe. And our concern was that the pro-climate companies who are members of the chamber were trying to have it both ways. So they were issuing statements, in favor of Build Back Better and the Inflation Reduction Act, and the chamber was spending all this money to kill it and to be against it and to sort of use their lobbying muscle for the opposition. So we want to do a few quick quiz questions, and we're just going to have you drop it in the chat. We're not doing any fancy polling for this. But how much money do you think the U.S. Chamber of Commerce spent lobbying Congress in 2022? And we picked that year because that was when the climate legislation was really, in Congress, and all sides were lobbying pretty hard. Do you think it was 20 million, 40, 60, or 80? So everybody, if you could just vote, and Deb, if you let me know the answers, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, Ken said 100 million, which wasn't on the list,
All
but
right.
I appreciate the sentiment there. Okay, lots of 80 millions, mostly 80 millions and a couple 60 million guesses, Jennifer.
Okay, this is a very educated audience. We knew you would be. It was a whopping 80 million. And, again, who knows what they did in terms of 100 million? Maybe there was some dark money in there. But as you know, when people lobby Congress, they really do have to register in this database how much money they're spending. And this was a huge amount of money, huge for the US Chamber. And we know that they were doing it to stop progress. So now we've named these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 so that you can just put that in the chat. Which of the following climate policies do you believe that the chamber opposed between 2022 and 2023? So I already told you it was the Inflation Reduction Act, so I actually gave that away. But methane standards, SEC emissions disclosure rules, EPA power plant pollution regulations, or all of the above?
We've got mostly, you all are ahead here with knowing these things. So most everyone is saying 5, Jennifer.
Absolutely.
And Ken is noting also new building standards. Yeah, there are some new things they proposed that aren't here. Yeah.
It's even worse. So then when we last gave this presentation, the chamber announced that it's suing to block California's landmark climate disclosure laws, right? But the steady obstruction, they're knee-jerk against everything. When the IRA even came out as legislation, it was hundreds of pages long, and the chamber within 24 hours said they were against it. So again, their knee-jerk reaction is that it's anti-business. We don't need any climate legislation, and they are really powerful players to obstruct where we are. And luckily, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act without them, despite them, even though they were spending millions of dollars to convince Joe Manchin by running ads in West Virginia to vote against it. Now, the big climate fight that we got past 2022 has been these SEC climate disclosure rules. And again, I know that you all were following that debate. They were originally slated to be quite ambitious and to include Scope 3 emissions for public companies. And as these two experts again said, the opposition to this regulation was largely driven by lobbying funded by the fossil fuel industry, by these vested interests of trade associations. And as Sheldon Whitehouse said in one of his press releases, the US Chamber lobbied really hard to water down the rule. And in fact, they won. So the rule that SEC released last month did not include Scope 3 emissions. And then even with that smaller, weakened, much more targeted rule, the US Chamber immediately sued them, and they've now put this regulation on ice. And so it's not, now it's just being litigated, which is a delay tactic that we've seen the opposition do over and over. So that is why it is time to escape the chamber. And I'm going to turn it over to Deb to talk about this campaign and what we're doing with it. You're on. Yeah.
Sorry. Yep. Sorry. I was just starting and realized I'm muted. So first of all, thank you all so much for being here. And I'm Deb McNamara, and I joined the ClimateVoice team a little over a year ago. And my background is entirely in environmental and climate nonprofit work, and have been leading a number of campaigns focused on climate action. And I'm really excited about the work that ClimateVoice is doing, and particularly this policy lever that we're talking about. And I know we're going to switch gears a little bit now. So Jennifer sort of laid the foundation for why understanding climate policy dynamics at work is so important. And now we're going to shift gears into what we can be doing about it. And actually knowing about the Chamber of Commerce's obstruction is really, really important, because they are likely the number one obstructor, if not the main obstructor. They're one of the main obstructors of climate policy progress in the US. And globally, I know we have at least one person here from the UK. Globally, they're still powerful globally as well. And other trade associations are playing a similar role wherever you are in the world. So it's really important to understand how these trade associations are fitting in and how companies can be engaging the issue. So ClimateVoice launched a campaign just last year. It's called Escape the Chamber. This is a first place where you can begin turning your climate anxiety into action. You can sign a petition. It looks like Ken already has. I put the link to the website here. So if any of you on this call know that your company is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, this is a place for you to engage. We have a whole action plan here. We have sample emails you can send to leaders and so on. So this is definitely a place to dig in when you want to take action. And if your company isn't a member of the chamber, then please spread the word. We all need to understand the role that the chamber is playing when it comes to climate policy obstruction. So I just want to say, relative to the chamber, one thing that is important for everyone to know is not only are they blocking all of these policy measures that Jennifer talked about, but most often they're lobbying on the side of the American Petroleum Institute and the American Gas Association. So that is their lobbying track record. It's a long record. Brown University released a study in 2001 showing that it's actually this pattern of aligning with the fossil fuel industry and blocking climate policy progress is several decades old. So that is part of why we feel that it's so important for employees to understand this is a key lever for taking action. And Jennifer, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay. Oh, I think there was one, or did you mean to skip that quiz question? I think there's a quick quiz about which company has left the US Chamber of Commerce over this issue. Does anybody know this one? Over the issue of climate. Oh yeah,
the only one before, Deb, because I'm sorry I did skip, was Bill McKibben. So Bill McKibben, when you go on the site, did our explainer video, and he's very, very funny. It's only like 2.5 minutes, and it's a great thing to share with other people if you're active on social media, and you can say, hey, did you know that the US Chamber was such a big obstructor? Watch this video.
Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer. And okay, I see Ken is guessing Salesforce. Any other guesses?
We're getting a bunch of Salesforces.
No other guesses. Okay, that's okay. So Apple actually left the chamber in 2009 over the issue of climate. And there have been some other companies since then that have left. Unilever, yep, thank you, Jennifer. So Apple left in 2009. At the time, Catherine Novelli wrote a letter saying Apple supports regulating greenhouse gases, GHG emissions. It's frustrating the chambers are at odds with us in this effort. So we wanted to just share this example to show that it is indeed possible to take a stand and leave the chamber. Unilever has also left the chamber over the issue. There are other companies over the years that have left too. It's unclear whether it was just climate or other issues, but I know Starbucks left years ago as well, just to give a couple of examples. And Jennifer, you can go to the next slide. So again, we've been talking about why climate policy matters at work, and we're going to be switching gears to how employees can drive change at work. But before I jump into these next couple of slides, which have some specific action steps for you all, I just want to say that when it comes to the chamber and what we want companies to do as part of our Escape the Chamber campaign, we really want companies to be publicly distancing themselves from the chamber when it comes to climate policy obstruction. And they can do that by public statements. So you all can be urging your employers or other companies, you can urge them to make public statements to distance themselves from the chamber's anti-climate positions. We, of course, are wanting companies to be lobbying for pro-climate policy. And so that's another call to action for employees. And we're going to talk about some specific steps that you all can take. But we want to be asking companies to do more to lobby for and speak up against the obstruction. And then we also want companies to align political contributions. So a lot of companies are paying dues, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in dues to the US Chamber of Commerce while having these pro-climate stances. So we want companies to align those political contributions. And then finally, we would like companies to be leading pro-climate policy coalitions or joining them. So there's a gap there. So this is part of what we would love employees to be advocating for. So taking more of a leadership role when it comes to climate policy advocacy. So Jennifer, oh good, great, you already put it in the chat. So ClimateVoice has produced a toolkit, and it looks like Jennifer, we lost our slides, but that's okay.
I'm back.
It's okay,
I
perfect.
had something I was doing fancy.
It's called Climate Action at Work. It's a guide for employee advocates. So again, this is a resource for you all as to how to take action to advocate for climate policy progress at work. And Jennifer, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'm just going to go over some very tangible steps. We have 4 steps that I'm going to go over, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. But at first, I just want to lay this groundwork about how important employees are in driving change. So again, it's important for us to understand how much power we have as employees as part of these organizations. So 71%, and this is again in the US, US employees surveyed believe that they have the power to make changes in society, and leadership appears to be listening. And an example that we highlight here on the slide is from a Deloitte report from 2023, found that more than half of C-suite executives said that employee activism on climate had led their organizations to increase sustainability actions over the last year. That's really big. That is really significant. So we wanted to highlight that finding. 24% said it led to a significant increase. So the employee voice is making a difference. And you can go to the next slide, Jennifer. So again, this is just a reminder about our opportunity. So as employees, and I think there's at least one person who's retired, but hopefully even as a retired employee, you can still be using your voice to drive change. You have a lot of influence within your company, and companies have a lot of power and policy, like we've just talked about. So we are just urging everyone to be raising your voice in service of climate policy advocacy, because as we've talked about, this is a key part in getting to the change that we need to see right now. So our first step is getting the facts. So that is the place to start. One of the things an example of getting the facts is to read your sustainability report, or to look at a trade association audit if your company has done such a thing, or even just asking, like, do we have such a thing? So those are some examples of getting the facts, just making sure you understand what the landscape is at your place of work. You can also read a government affairs report if you have that at your company. So that is the first step, is just get educated, get the facts. And I have a question. We're trying to keep our questions easy so you can engage in the chat. But do you know where policy ranks as a priority for your company? And you can just answer yes or no, or I don't know. But we're just curious, like how many of you feel like you have a pulse on how policy ranks as a priority where you work, and if you're retired, where you used to work? Okay, like a 1 out of 5 or 10, 10, 1 out of 10. Okay, so low. Yeah, I got it. Anyone else want to weigh in? Like, do you know, any
Just
sense of
no, or don't know? Oh, you're the founder, so it's up to you. So all right, we like that.
Okay.
You are the policy priority setter. Okay, nice.
Great. So like a 9.5. All right, well, it's just a few. Yeah, just we were just curious to know if you had a sense of where your company is landing with policy. But this would be the first step, is to find out, do some digging to get the facts. And Jennifer, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And I can just start. Yeah, so the second step is about finding your influence. So when you're on the inside of a company, you have this insider access that is super valuable. So we encourage you to take advantage of that, begin connecting with individuals who are the key influencers and decision makers. Sounds like some of you are those influencers and decision makers. That's great. You can research the organizational structure at your company, of the Chief Sustainability Officer and the Office of Government Affairs. And if you work at a smaller company, you can start figuring out who's making the decisions when it comes to sustainability or government affairs. Doing a power map is also super helpful. And then we'll talk more about engaging your coworkers, but that's a big part of finding your influence. And I just wanted to give an example. So employees from a tech company that we work with asked for a meeting with their company leaders. Like once they identified who the decision makers were, they asked for a meeting. They wanted to understand the policy strategy for the company. They came prepared with questions and were able to elevate the issue of climate policy with their company leaders. Another example of using your influence is to raise questions at town hall events or other events as well. So using your influence to bring questions, to keep the pressure on through questions is a great example. And again, this is just a quick yes or no question. Do you know if your company took a public position on the IRA, for example, or on the recent SEC disclosure rules? Do folks know if your company has been taking a position? And it's okay, you can say, I don't know too. Okay, via social media. Yep. And that's actually, we're often asking companies to make public statements, and social media is a perfect avenue for that. Anyone else?
And
Jennifer,
I'm just curious if anyone knew if their company made public comments on the regulations. Since over the last 2 years, there was, a huge comment period where companies could really weigh in, shaping the rules before they were released. So we're going to assume you don't know.
we'll take that as you're not sure. Okay, go ahead. You can go to the next one, Jennifer. So the third step is about engaging your coworkers. So again, we're just giving you some ways to think about taking action at work. So we encourage you to join or start an employee resource group, request funding if resources allow. You could host an educational event to engage your coworkers. You could also create a working group with climate-focused goals. And we wanted to give you another example. We did a presentation for a company, and it was for a sustainability affinity group. And out of that presentation, there were 5 employees that came together, and they decided to create a climate policy subcommittee. So even if you're already part of a group, if policy isn't on the radar, you could get together with, a couple of coworkers, even 1 or 2. If you have a small group, that's a great place to start. But that subcommittee focused on policy issues and then would report back to the broader affinity group. So that's just an example. And I'm going to go ahead, Jennifer, I think I'm just going to go ahead and go to the next one rather than ask another. We have some other questions for you, but that's all right. We'll let there be some time for an open Q&A here in a minute. So our final step is, of course, advocating for action, right? We want to turn our anxiety into action at the workplace. And so after you've taken these other steps and engage your coworkers, we invite you to advocate for action. So some ideas here are to craft a proposal. So create summary materials for decision makers and or fellow employees. You might draft an advocacy letter. It could be from a small group, or you could gather signatures to show mass support. Prepare to make your pitch for whatever it is you're asking for. Maybe you're asking, just to bring it, like give a tangible example, like right now the SEC climate disclosure laws are in the news. It could be about asking your company, like, have we come out publicly in support? Are we making a statement countering the chamber's lawsuit, for example? Like those are just, in the moment examples. And then of course, just getting clear on your goals and the outcomes desired and next steps. And we wanted to just give you an example. Some employees that we work with at companies have been running the Escape the Chamber campaign internally. So they've customized a petition for their leaders. They're emailing their leaders with a call to action around if we're not going to leave the chamber, what are we doing to lead on climate policy advocacy? Has our company made a public statement countering the chamber's obstruction, and so on? So employees have been urging their companies to make public statements on climate policy issues. And I think, Jennifer, go ahead and go to the next slide. I think we might be close to Q&A.
Actually, we are ready for Q&A. And so I'm
Yes.
going to stop sharing for
Perfect.
Q&A. And I see that we have a question in the chat about youth. The person who asked it, do you want to get off the mic and ask it in person?
Sure, thank you. My name is Claudia Damiani. I work with an organization called Petilution, and we have an internship group that joins every summer. And they are just about to join the workforce. We recruit straight from high school in San Jose. And I was wondering, what are some additional climate action strategies that could be applied for this particular age group? We know that they don't feel like a whole lot of agency. We added some components of self-advocacy because we noticed that in order to do advocacy for bigger things, they first need to be able to advocate for themselves, and it's an area where they don't feel super comfortable yet. So yeah, basically, what are some strategies that could work for people, for young people that are just about to join the workforce?
Well, go ahead, Jennifer. It looks like
No,
you have
go,
to.
Deb.
I was just going to say, well, one of the first things that comes to mind is a partner organization of ours called Climate Change Makers. I'm just thinking about ways that students can be getting involved in getting the practice of doing advocacy work. So Climate Change Makers is a great organization. Their founder serves on our advisory board, and they host hours of action. So I guess my answer is pointing towards helping students find ways that they can get practice doing real life advocacy. And I like Climate Change Makers because they are doing policy advocacy work. And it's it's open to anyone, employees, students, for people who are retired. So that's just a quick resource that comes to mind. But go ahead, Jennifer.
No, I just put their link in the chat. I think that's great. And one of the initiatives that Climate Change Makers was doing is they did a whole week or two about electric school buses. And, you know, there's all of this money because of the Inflation Reduction Act to electrify the fleets of schools, and there's public money for school districts. And so if these students are still in school, and I don't know if they're in college or, you know, what school they're in, they could focus on the high schools in their community to focus on getting school buses there. I think it's practice with getting the attention of the lawmakers. And the other thing is that when it comes to climate, I think all levels of government really matter. So it's sort of like, we always talk about the federal government, but there's your local government, you know, there's your state government, and then there's federal government in terms of the advocacy priorities wherever these students are, and researching what those are and where they could raise their voice. I think talking to lawmakers is just so powerful, and, you know, they have to be open to our feedback. As you know, at Actera, since you're advocating for all sorts of policy priorities and the things that Michelle said earlier. But I do think when it's around school district issues, students feel closer to it. Michelle, I don't know if there's something you want to say about that.
You could send them over to our Actera Student Ambassador Program. We literally teach them how to speak up and how to go to a city council meeting. And we've seen these high schoolers talk with such, in my opinion, so much like eloquence, and like so much, they speak so clearly and they're so passionate about what they want to convey. But we teach them all how to do that. And also, you know, if they don't feel comfortable making spoken comments, we also do written comments as well. So I can connect with Claudia more about that if you are interested, Claudia.
Yes, please. That sounds very interesting, and thank you everyone for the presentation.
Oh, thank you for that question, and thank you, Michelle. I knew you'd have the answer. So any other questions or comments or, wins that people want to share or examples of the successful advocacy you guys are doing?
I see some, well, I'm in Colorado, and I think Kate, I don't know if I think it's probably the Kate that I know, but I'm just thinking about advocacy work that we've been doing in Colorado. And I don't know, Kate, if you want to say anything about what's been working, what's been working for your organization.
Yeah, definitely. And it is me, Kate. Nice to see you, Deb. So Deb and I go way back working in the anti-fracking movement. So we've seen the amounts of money that are funneled into campaigns against, pro-climate, pro-healthy communities. We ran an initiative that would have been a 2,500-foot fracking setback from communities, and we saw the industry put in $50 million just to keep fracking right in people's backyards where they look out their window and they see rigs. So just really devastating. But, what I will say does work is like everything that we've been talking about today. I've actually recently been transitioning my perspective on working with more businesses, especially in the outdoor community. There's businesses like Patagonia, Cotopaxi, where they, offer their employees awesome benefits, and then they give them volunteer hours to go do projects in the community, as well as, still paying them, but then also while they're on the clock, go to the Capitol and testify. So it's really awesome to see, just like businesses put their money where their mouth is in a way. Also, there's awesome organizations like Protect Our Winners, just seeing more like bigger industries get involved with the climate movement is inspiring. So that's what's giving me hope these days.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And I want to thank, so I hope you don't mind me calling on you, but Kate is doing a lot of work with the outdoor industry sector here in Colorado to try to get the power of that sector to leverage that power and to leverage that voice, especially when it comes to the fossil fuel fights that we're facing here on the ground. I think it's a similar model of change of just making sure that that sector of the economy is wielding its influence, because right now the fossil fuel interests are dominating the discourse, but actually the outdoor industry has a tremendous amount of influence in the state too. So thanks, Kate, for working on leveraging that.
Yes. Can I say actually one more thing?
Yeah.
So yes, exactly to all of that. And the outdoor industry is $1 trillion industry. And on Monday for Earth Day, I'm actually organizing a bus, if anyone's a local Coloradan here, to get people to get on a bus and go down to Grand Junction to make public comment at a listening session where U.S. Senator John Hickenlooper will be to discuss making the Dolores Canyon a national monument. So if anyone's interested, I can drop my email in the chat. This is an example of me doing like outdoor business outreach and just outdoor enthusiast outreach. We really want people to get down there so we can, prevent mining, fracking, future development in this area.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And I see your comment in the chat, Ken. I wish it wasn't so, but it does help when there's industry interest behind something too. Are there any other? Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
Jennifer.
I was just going to say, we believe business has this very powerful voice for a good reason, and there's strength in numbers. So I love the industry strategy. We're trying to get big tech to come together as a group. Again, they're much more influential and tons of revenue compared to even big oil in the US if they acted together. If we could get the pro-climate companies who all have these very ambitious net zero goals to speak up as a united front. But unfortunately, it's hard to do it. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, any other questions? Otherwise, Jennifer has a couple of final call to action slides, but want to make space if there are any other questions or comments, either in the chat or feel free to take yourself off of mute. Okay, well, we'll switch to a few more slides, but again, feel free to share anything in the chat, and I'll hand it back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Deb. So, and thank you for your questions. So I had the honor of sharing the stage with our founder, Bill Weil, at GreenBiz this February. So for those of you who are familiar with GreenBiz, it is the biggest sustainability conference and community for sustainability professionals who are particularly in companies. And this year there were 2,000 people live in Phoenix, Arizona for this meeting, and about hundreds of thousands of people, they told us, watching the live stream. And Bill was invited to give the keynote. And this was particularly poignant and meaningful to us because tragically, Bill lost his speaking voice due to ALS. And he's been dealing with this very brutal disease for the past couple of years and has not spoken at all. So when we are in team meetings, he types in the chat, or we use this app called Whisper to watch him typing live so that we don't interrupt him. And we worked with an AI company before this opportunity and recreated Bill's actual speaking voice based on only 3 hours of his prior speeches before he lost his voice. And it was an extraordinary experience. It sounded just like him. And this AI allowed him to give a brand new speech. So our, mandate as a team was, okay, if we have 2,000 sustainability professionals in a room, what do we want to tell them? Like, what is the action that we want to do? We know these people are aligned with our values. We know that their jobs are around advancing climate and decarbonizing within their companies. And, back to what we've talked about, what we want people to do is lead. And we really feel like when we look out at corporate America right now in this decisive decade for climate, we're not seeing enough really bold, ambitious leadership. So we created a statement. And our focus of the statement was about leave, elevate, advocate, and demonstrate. And basically what we said to this group is your voice together can be a chorus. So the title of Bill's speech was called From a Whisper to a Chorus, because he said, I didn't realize how powerful one's voice is until I lost it. And I still have a voice. And I have managed to raise my voice in writing and to still talk to journalists from reporting. And now to give you this speech with AI enhancements. And if we could all raise our voice together as a community of people where this is our mandate in terms of our livelihoods and our life's work, then we could really make a difference. And what we wanted was the statement that sustainability professionals know that climate policy is so important, but often it's not in their actual mandate for work. So there's a government affairs group, or there are other people who are lobbying Congress, or there's people in DC, and the sustainability people might be somewhere else. And we want them to center policy as the transformative lever that's going to make change. So this is the statement. It is a personal statement. We're asking people to sign as individuals. It is not a corporate commitment. We don't need it to go through legal. And so when we issued and unveiled this statement at GreenBiz, we were a little anxious. We weren't sure if people were going to sign. So again, what we were asking people to acknowledge was that we need to leave these obstructing trade associations. We must elevate climate policy as a company priority. We have to advocate for these binding policies. Bill, in his remarks, really talked about the fact that this voluntary agreements aren't doing enough. We're not making things at the speed and scale we need. And then we need to demonstrate real commitment to the collective action that was agreed upon at COP28. So we didn't know if people would sign, but we got some pre-signatories. And the beautiful thing was we had people in the room who had pre-signed this statement who we knew, and we invited them on stage at the end. And we had, I think it was like 17 people who were very iconic current or former sustainability leaders that the audience would know. Bill got a rousing standing ovation. I must just say it was an honor of a lifetime to be on stage with him. I was just advancing the slides. That's what I was, the chief sidekick, trying to help him out with this. And people were really moved. And again, our focus for this lead statement, and we're going to ask you to sign if you are a sustainability professional, or we're going to ask, could you share the lead statement for us? So basically, we want current and former people in these roles, members of sustainability employee resource groups, because those people are really trying to be change agents within their companies. And then anyone working with a company to advance sustainability. So consultants or contractors or people who are giving advice to these companies also count as sustainability professionals. And we're thrilled to share with you that almost 800 people have signed the lead statement right now. Please follow us, particularly on LinkedIn, which is our main social media channel, because that's where the companies are. But we also have a great presence on Instagram and on YouTube. And this is our QR code. And if you just scan this code or go to WeLeadOnClimatePolicy.org, you can see the statement. You can see all the public signatories. We also gave people an option because we know that people are worried in terms of that they don't want to make a career damaging move to be against their company. They can sign confidentially, but we're thrilled to report that the vast majority of signatories have been public. So people have signed with their name, and we do ask you for your company because we're trying to track which companies we've reached. And anything you can do to help us spread the word about the lead statement. We're going to be running this for a year until the next Green Biz. Our goal is to have 1,000 people by Earth Day. So again, we got to close that 200-person gap. And people like you can really help us do that in terms of sharing it with your networks and your community. But we're thrilled about this. We feel like it was really meaningful. Bill continues to be an inspiration in terms of how he is raising his voice. And even despite battling this terrible disease, he is more committed to the fight, and his sense of urgency is even amplified. So we are focused on the lead statement. I want to end with our emails. Please reach out to us. Please follow ClimateVoice. Please give us more feedback. We'd love to stay in touch. And to Zach and Michelle, we're thrilled that you invited us to come share our message with you today, because we strongly believe this is the most important thing we can all be doing, which is unlock the power of our company's influence on behalf of everything that we're doing day to day to address the crisis. And I know all of you are doing tremendous, tremendous work. So with that, I will close. And I know, Michelle, you wanted to make some last comments. Thank you, Ken, for signing. Emails are just Jennifer@climatevoice.org and Deb@climatevoice.org. So super simple emails. We'd love to be in touch.
Yeah, and thank you. Thanks again for joining us. And Michelle, we'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you so much. Feel free to reshare, screen share your emails, or you can put it in the chat, whichever works best for both of you. I just want to say again, thank you so much to ClimateVoice and Jennifer and Deborah for talking today. And I hope everyone learned specific actions you can take to further climate action, petitions you can sign, coworkers and leaders you can talk to. And I know I feel so pumped up and inspired. I hope everyone else is too, on all the things you can do, especially in your workplace, to further along climate action in your workplace. And then as a final reminder, please fill out the survey. I'll link it in the chat to give us any feedback you may have. Yeah, I just hope everyone has a great day, and thank you so much for attending.